Hey you guys, what's crackin'? Godsman here, coming at you with another deck profile. Well, with the release of the Impalio deck profile, I decided it was time to poll you guys in my community tab about which of the Destined ones would come next in my long train of deck profiles for these Destined ones. And although it was a fairly arduous and tight-knit race, we had a definitive winner, that being the Destined Mode of Infinity, Levidras. This beautiful yet terrifying bug dragon thing is a pretty interesting Destined one to talk about, and low-key, I'm glad you guys ended up voting him to be the one next in line because I absolutely love this thing to death. Now, Levidras is a bit of an interesting case because he's kind of a paradox. On one hand, he is the deck that we've got to play test the longest, as he was the first Destined one to ever be revealed to the community. However, despite this, he's ironically the least solved deck of the bunch because there is, pun absolutely intended, an almost infinite number of ways to build Levidras as a deck. Whether you want to focus on his offense, defense, recursion, or maximum combo ability, Levidras just has it all, and he's able to fully tap in and utilize the many different facets of the Stoicheia card pool to its advantage. So yeah, needless to say, this guy has got skills. Of course, when it comes to Levidras, I have to say it straight out that there really is no set way to build the deck. Therefore, I'm not going to tell you straight up that this is the objective best way to build Levidras, but in my opinion, I think I've done a pretty darn good job at solving the deck to be maximizing its good traits as well as shoring up its most notable weaknesses. And that is going to come by way of a more order-heavy build, but we're going to get into that a little bit more later. For now, if you do like this deck profile and you have any comments or changes about it, then be sure to comment down below. And with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed the deck profile. Let's get into it. Starting with the ride line as always, we're starting with the Grade 0 Stagnipper Dragon. Now, Stagnipper Dragon is pretty funny to me because this is normally the part where I tell you that this guy is mandatory, as he is required by the Grade 1 Scorepiercer Dragon, the Levidras ride line, in order to ride into Grade 2 Mantis Scythe from the ride deck for free. However, that's not going to apply to us. The reason? We're not running the ride line at all. Yeah, why is that? The reason being that while Levidras himself is a really baller and strong unit, his ride line is oddly very mid. Scorepiercer especially, because despite it allowing you to be able to ride into Mantis Scythe for free, the +1 in quote-unquote card advantage by sparing you the need to discard is about as low impact a +1 as you could possibly get. It doesn't give you any consistency, it doesn't give you any power, nada. It just says that you don't need to discard. And in a deck like Levidras, where, spoiler alert, we can revive through multiple different methods, that discard might have actually been kind of helpful later on, so it's not doing us any favors. Mantis Scythe Dragon is a much better card by comparison, as being able to look at the top 5 and add literally anything, including Persona Rights and PGs off of it, is a pretty versatile skill and gives you a really nice search radius. The problem with this guy, however, is that he Energy Blasts 3, and the #1 most important staple in this deck, Energy Blast 3, for its main effect, and we want to absolutely spam that card as much as humanly possible, so this EB3 can actually get in the way of maximizing that unit. So both of these ride line units are kind of a bust. So instead, we're actually going to opt for the Zorga ride line from way back in set 1, starting with the Grade 1 Rancor Chain. Rancor Chain, I don't really need to explain what he does. He draws cards, discards an order, and if you low roll and don't get an order, you have to pitch 2 instead. Keep in mind though that when you're using Rancor Chain, you want to specifically discard one of our 9 normal orders that we have in the deck. Don't discard the Elementaria Sanctitude. That's a 1-of and a very precious one at that. The reason why you don't want to discard it, however, is that the Black Tears Husk Dragon has a skill that when he's placed in the Vanguard circle, you can add back a normal order from the drop zone to the hand. Note, normal order. That means that it won't be able to recur back Elementaria Sanctitude, and that's a really important PG to have, especially against some certain matchups, so please don't waste that if you can help it. Honestly, if Elementaria is the only order in your hand, I'd rather just have you discard 2 cards for the Rancor Chain downside. It's just better off that way. Moving on to the main star of the show, we've got the Destined Mode of Infinity, Levidras. Now, this guy has 3 skills that are all pretty powerful when you really think about it. The first main skill is act on the Vanguard circle once per turn. Cost Counterblast 1. Choose one of each of your and your opponent's rear circle and put an Infinity Eye marker onto each of them. Now, Infinity Eye markers are the thing that make Levidras both unique and absolutely fascinating as a deck strategy. While they have no skills on their own, Levidras actually grants them a skill by way of his secondary skill, which reads, Auto on the Vanguard circle. When either player's unit on a rear circle with your Infinity Eye marker attacks or boosts, you may have that unit get power plus 10,000 or minus 10,000 until end of battle. If your opponent's unit got minus 10,000, remove one of your Infinity Eye marker from that rear circle and draw a card. So when put part and parcel with each other, these two skills allow Levidras to have a supremely strong sword and shield type playstyle, where your units benefit from a pseudo force 1 marker every single turn. For you V-goons, you'll understand what that means. And on the opponent's side, you'll have to be dealing with a minus 10k that also gives you a draw. So it's almost like you were able to get both the draw benefit of a draw trigger and also the 10k shield value of a draw trigger. It's quite nifty, to be honest. Now, because of these two aspects together, the usage of Infinity Eye markers is one of your main ways of defending, but it's also one of your main power line plays. However, Infinity Eye markers have another huge benefit to Levidras that make them of quintessential importance, which is that several of your rear guards actually require Infinity Eye markers to be present on the field in order to get their effects. So being able to properly place and proliferate these Infinity Eye markers is paramount to success in Levidras. Now, in lieu of that, you do have more than one ways of actually getting Infinity Eye markers, but that's only a once per turn skill, that being the Divine skill. Divine skill, act on the Vanguard circle. If your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, cost Soul Blast 1. Choose one each of your and your opponent's rear circle, put an Infinity Eye marker onto each of them, and this unit gets power plus 10,000, critical plus 1 until end of turn. So yeah, technically speaking, there is another method of getting Infinity Eye markers aside from the once per turn act skill, but it is a once per game skill, so it's not getting much better. So yeah, Infinity Eye markers are incredibly precious. However, don't let this deter you. This Divine skill still kicks ass. Not only does getting an extra 7 Infinity Eye markers mean that you're effectively getting another 10,000 power to one of your rear circles every single turn, it also gives you another 10,000 shield, and it nets you yet another draw because those Infinity Eye markers in the opponent's circle is a draw by transitive property. And getting 10,000 power in a critical makes Levidras a pretty dangerous unit that can swing very high and lethally, especially on a Persona Ride turn. So don't underestimate this Divine skill. Perhaps the most nifty thing about this Divine skill is that there's really nothing to do for setting it up. The moment that you have it online, you should immediately shotgun this skill. There's nothing holding you back from doing it. So if you're going second against the deck, which is a very unfortunate position to be in, at least when playing second, you can shotgun this skill and clap back a bit harder with the heightened stats of Levidras and also the added Infinity Eye markers. So there is some amount of bounce back to be had when you're forced to lose the die roll. Of course, all said, Levidras is a pretty solid unit. However, he's only one piece of the puzzle, as this unit complements the power of the rear guards, and the rear guards in turn complement his own power. So let's go ahead and get into the main deck. Looking at the main deck, we of course are going to run 3 copies of Destined Levidras as Persona Ride copies. Persona Ride is just kind of a staple for any grade 3 deck that has Persona Ride. If you can Persona Ride, you should aim to do it, and Levidras is no exception. In fact, Persona Ride is quite useful in a deck like Levidras, because just to give a quick disclaimer here, Levidras does have multi-attack capabilities. However, those multi-attacks are Magnolia style in that they attack with units from the back row. This is a pretty cool strategy of getting extra attacks, of course, but the one downside of it is that you can't boost your front row units with units from the back row, meaning that all of your attacks, while swinging pretty decent, are not especially big. This is where the Persona Ride bonus of 10k to the front row comes in especially handy, because it helps substantiate your front row swingers' power so they can still continue to hit over numbers. So yeah, we definitely want to run some Persona Rides. However, despite that, we're not actually going to run Gradius Gradles or Regardless piece. Oh no. Instead, we opted for Radiance Caliburn. This is the new one that came out of the Festival Collection set that recently released, and we run this because both of its skills are both simple to achieve and super valuable to the deck. You can either choose from draw 2 cards or put this card into the soul and countercharge 1. Both these options are just supremely valuable. If you draw 2 cards, not only does it give you card advantage, which is kind of what Levidras is all about in a way, but it also grants you the ability to dig into your pieces. One of Levidras's biggest issues is that it's incredibly piece reliant. You need several important pieces to really get your maximum offense going, and without them, you're kind of in a rut. So Radiance Caliburn's extra draw power can really be the life-changing charge. There's no doubt about it. When you're drawing 2 cards, that is just so much potential. Whether you're drawing triggers, pieces, PGs, personas, there's really not a bad card to draw with this thing. So yeah, this is always going to be a pretty good effect. However, you can opt for the put into soul and countercharge effect alternatively. Now, soul, ironic to this being a Stoicheia deck, is not that big of an issue. However, that countercharge is a completely different story. Levidras is a counter-eating Fiend. This guy not only costs Counterblast 1 every turn to do Infinity Eye markers, which you absolutely must do Infinity Eye markers every single turn in order to keep scaling with your opponent, and also get those nifty ones on the opponent's circle so you can keep getting draws, so on and so forth. But there is a rear guard named Flux Seal. Now, Flux Seal's skill allows you to get one of those multi-attacks from the back row that I was alluding to before, but he does this for the price of a Counterblast. So generally speaking, a Levidras turn is going to entail 2 Counterblasts. There is a Revival card that is also a Counterblast, but that one's optional, so you're looking at 2 to 3 Counterblasts every turn. In order to combat this, we do have a main deck countercharger that came with Levidras's wave of support, but that may not be enough. So Radiance Caliburn's countercharge can come in clutch about as many times as the Pot of Greed effect. So whether it's option A or option B, this card is so important, so we're going to choose this regardless piece. Moving on to the other normal orders, we have Mythiarq Habitat as 3 copies. Now, Mythiarq Habitat is kind of another funny card here because it's technically a Mythiarq card, but it does not have 1 lick of a name restriction, a fact that we're going to fully intend to abuse. Here's what its effect does though. Look at the top 7 cards of your deck, and you choose up to 1 unit card with grade less than or equal to your Vanguard. You call it to the rear circle and shuffle the deck. So this is really nifty for getting your pieces. I said it before, but this is a very piece-reliant deck, so this will help you grab the one thing that you may be missing from a complete battle formation. Now, one thing I would caution you on with Mythiarq Habitat is, despite it being a grade 1 order, I wouldn't use this on turn 1. And the reason being is several of your most crucial pieces require the presence of Infinity Eye markers on the field in order to get their on-place skills. The problem with that is that Infinity Eye markers can only be reduced by Levidras, of course. So effectively, if you want to make those things not vanillas when they hit the field, you have to wait until turn 3 to do so. So I would delay gratification and wait until you're at turn 3, unless you have multiples of them in the hand, in which case, yeah, go ahead. Just immediately spit out the first one. There's no consequences to that very much because you can just spit out the next one. But even then, be prepared to potentially call vanilla when doing so. Another grade 1 order that we got is Spiritual Body Condensation. This one's an oldie but a goodie. Its ability lets you Soul Blast 1 to call something from the drop zone with plus 5,000 power. This will almost never go out of style, really. But however, similar to Habitat, I would also recommend holding off on using this immediately, despite it being a grade 1 order, especially over Habitat. Now, with Habitat, the reason why you hold off from that is because you want to maximize the use of your pieces that you call. The reason why we hold off on Spiritual Body Condensation is that it's distinctly a comeback card more than anything. Being able to recur your units back to the field is a great way to combat against field control, which is one of the banes of Levidras's existence, as we need to maintain that meticulous board state for optimal combat. If they pick off one of your key multi-attackers or resource cards, what have you, using Spiritual Body Condensation can get them right back. And one of the cards in this deck is another revival unit, so you can domino effect with Spiritual Body Condensation or to just replenish most of your board. So yeah, this is a very crucial comeback piece, and that's something that you want to hold on to until ideally turn 4, unless you know you're going against a deck that does not have 1 lick of field control, in which case you could pretty reliably just call back something that you discarded or intercepted with earlier. The final order that we're running is 2 copies of Searching for Infinite Knowledge. Now, this is the one that is actually in theme for Levidras, and it's both the most powerful and most awkward one to use. Here's why. You play it with cost Energy Blast 2 if you have a Vanguard with Levidras in its card name. The effect is that you choose a card with grade less than or equal to your Vanguard for your drop, and you call it to rear circle. That unit gets power plus 5,000 for each of your Infinity Eye markers in the same column as that called unit. So yeah, this could get a unit with potentially 20,000 power out there because it counts both yours and your opponent's Infinity Eye markers in the column. That's really good, and this is especially useful for one of the rear guards in our deck that actually has a guard restrict associated with it, so that guard restrict plus this huge power up could really annoy the heck out of your opponent. The downside of this, however, is twofold. One, it utilizes Energy Blast, and as I mentioned before with Mantis Scythe, Energy Blast is kind of a touchy subject because the next card we're going to talk about is going to be monopolizing the energy as much as possible. However, even if you do choose to afford it, there's another issue with it. That being that it requires you to maximize it, you want to put all of your markers in the same column. However, this is not typically how you should arrange Infinity Eye markers in Levidras. As I mentioned before, several of your units actually require Infinity Eye markers to be in the same column as them in order to get their effects off. The way to actually ensure this would be to place an Infinity Eye marker on one column for one side of the field and the other column for the other side of the field, aka left for your opponent is therefore left for you, so on and so forth. That way you can cover both of your columns with at least one Infinity Eye marker and turn them both online for all of your on-play skills. Searching for infinite knowledge is counterintuitive to that because they want you to put all your eggs into one proverbial basket, in this case a proverbial column basket, if you will. So that's what makes it awkward. However, this can still be worked with, either because you can just choose to say F it and get a little bit less power from the call, or if you do put them all in the column, it might be useful to just wait a turn and make this a turn 4 revive for a really huge blow up from one of your rear guards. Either way, it still has some pretty good potential, and if you're not hitting the Onagastas, which is that staple I'm talking about, then you may actually have the energy to be able to use this regardless. So that's why we're running at a couple copies, because it is still useful, and when you just got a lot of markers on the field regardless, then yeah, setup or no setup, you just are able to enable this pretty well no matter the situation. So yeah, early on it's pretty awkward, but as time goes on it gets progressively more and more worth it. So a couple copies is about right for this card. Now we're going to move on to the main deck normal units. First off is 4 of Onodagasta. This guy is one of the bread and butters of the deck, perhaps even the most clutch staple of them all. He has 2 very important skills. First off, auto. When this unit is placed in rear circle, if you have an Infinity Eye marker in the same column as this unit, note that could be on your opponent's side of the field, it still just counts the overall column. You Energy Blast 3 to look at the top 2 cards of your deck, choose a card from among them, put it in the hand, and put the rest on the top or the bottom of the deck in any order, and this unit gets power plus 5,000 until end of turn. Yeah, that is already really good. But before we talk about it, let me quickly explain the secondary skill. Continuous on the rear circle. During your turn, if you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard Levidras in its card name, and you have 3 or more Infinity Eye marker, this unit gets power plus 5,000, and if you do not have another back row rear guard the same name as this unit can attack from the back row. Holy stinking super crap. Like, there is so much going on with Onodagasta, and it's all excellent. Being able to Energy Blast 3 for a plus one of your choice off the top 2 may not sound very good at first, but whether it's a trigger or a normal unit or something more niche, like say like a freaking OT, if you're going for especially big use or whatever, you can add a lot of cards off of this. However, it's the stacking that's even more important than the add 1, because while add 1 is a good way to get pluses, stacking a card could help really ensure that you hit a super deadly drive check. One of the nice things about having Levidras as a Vanguard is when you use that divine skill, they're not really inclined to let that go through because that critical is deadly enough as it is. So if you back it up with another guaranteed critical stacked on top of the deck, which they're going to be afraid of because they'll know that you stacked in the first place, this card is kind of telegraphing that, you can then choose to stack something like a heal trigger or front trigger and just swing in a particular order that maximizes whatever drive check that you know is coming. So it really helps you make the best use of your board. Another thing about this stack is even if you have the bot deck, it's nice that you get power from both the first skill and the second skill. So this guy, when you first place it on turn 4, is going to be a 20k attacker, 30k with Infinity Eye, 40k in Persona. You get the deal. It gets pretty big pretty quickly. If that weren't enough, being able to multi-attack for effectively free from the back row as long as you don't have another one is super nice. And even though it has a name restriction against itself, bear in mind the name restriction only applies when there's another one in the back row. So you get to have one in the front row doing some attacking and one in the back row doing some attacking. That's a pretty good board state regardless. So yeah, even at multiple copies on the field, he's still extremely useful. You run for this guy, no doubt about it. Now moving on to Godbreak. This is another grade 2, and we're running it only at 3 copies. Now, Godbreak is that guard restrict unit I was talking about before, and the way he does it is that when another unit in the same column as him attacks, see, that's kind of the Magnolia restriction there, because you would need another, in order to attack with him, another unit in the same column, you kind of need that back row attacking gimmick enabled. You Soul Blast 1, and not only do you give it 10,000 power, but your opponent, for the battle that he attacks, cannot call cards from the hand if they have the same grade as one of their units on the field. So let's say they had like a grade 1 and 2 on the field. They can't call grade 1s or 2s to Guardian Circle for the battle that he attacks from the hand. This can be really tricky if you're able to get him to really high number values, and you can, between Persona Ride, Infinity Eye markers, his own 10,000 power, calling him off something like Spiritual Body or Infinite Knowledge. This guy can get massive really quickly. And then if you give him a critical by, say, a critical that you stacked with Onodagasta off top 2, that plus the guard restrict, because grade 1s are pretty crucial grade to have on the field, yeah, your opponent's going to be in kind of a tight spot. So you can kind of plan your offense around that if you see it ahead of time. Godbreak just puts them in a really tight space. And Soul Blast is not really a condition, man, like whatsoever. Soul Blast is so free in this deck that I kind of wish there was more ways to conveniently Soul Blast without taking away from the other crucial aspects of this deck. But really, you're energy blasting and counter blasting so much that Soul Blast by comparison is just a free resource. So yeah, we run only 3 of them because of deck space, but still, this is a very crucial part of the deck if you ask me. Now, the final grade 2 of the deck is Pack Claw Hunter Huli. Now, Huli has a skill that when it's placed on rear circle, if you have an Infinity Eye marker in the same column as this unit, you counterblast 1 to choose a grade 3 or less from the drop, you call it to rear circle. And then if you have 3 or more Infinity Eye markers, this unit gets power plus 10,000 until end of turn. Now, interesting thing to know about this one is in order to activate its skill, you only need an Infinity Eye marker in the same column as it, so again, the opponent side of the field counts for this. So Huli grants you a pretty open-ended revive. It just gives you more of a comeback ability against field control, which is very necessary for this deck, and it's just another way to get a pretty decent beater out there. I mentioned it before, but if you call this off Infinite Knowledge or Spiritual Body Condensation, that one order can then domino effect to get another card out there and quickly build back your field against major field control aspects. And there's nothing stopping you from calling a Huli on Huli, which can then proc again. So if you got a lot of CB for some reason, maybe because they damage you really high, so you just got some stuff to burn in a pretty fast game state, then yeah, go ahead, just counterblast until the cows come home and build back your field better. Moving on to the grade 1s, we've got Full Knowledge Foxtail at 4 copies. This is the most important grade 1 of the deck, and I'll tell you why. Continuous on the rear circle. During the battle that this unit boosted, if you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard Levidras in its card name, this unit gets power plus 5,000. If you've seen a lot of the Divine Skill boosters, you already know where this is going. Auto on the rear circle, when this unit boosts a grade 3 or greater Vanguard Levidras in its card name, if you have an Infinity Eye marker on your opponent's rear circle, no, this one only cares they have one in the circle in general. It doesn't force you to put it in the same column as it. Thank the Lord, because otherwise this would become a lot more awkward all of a sudden, as you don't want to throw stuff in the back row generally. This unit gets power plus 2,000 until end of battle. Then, cost counterblast 1. Choose one of your back row rear guards, and until end of turn, that unit can attack from the back row and gets power plus 10,000. This is one of the quintessential pieces of the deck, as it allows you to multi-attack. And what's nice about this multi-attack is even though it's somewhat expensive by costing a counterblast, thus making Levidras a CP2 or more turn usually, the upside is that this does not care what your opponent's grade is. So even if the opponent's at grade 2, you can still give plus 10k and the ability to attack to the back row for any of your units, and I do mean literally any of your units. So this is particularly useful if you're trying to maximize Godbreak power in order to swing big with that guard restrict. And if that wasn't bad, and that wasn't good enough, it's still a plus 15k booster for Levidras, so that makes magic numbers with Levidras as well, meaning that on a Persona Ride turn, if you boost with Levidras and have Divine Skill active and is boosting with Foxtail, you're looking at 48k with a critical, which is definitely not an insignificant stat line for sure. So yeah, Foxtail is just one of your bread and butter pieces. It enables so much in the deck, so we definitely want to prioritize running them at 4 copies. The other main grade 1 of this deck is Knight Evolutionary Piece, Clarence. Now, Clarence simply says that on the rear circle, at the end of battle, this unit attacked or boosted. If you have an Infinity Eye marker in the same column as this unit, and you did not countercharge this turn, put this unit in your soul and countercharge. It gives you countercharge, which is super important, as I mentioned with Radiance Caliburn. It also builds soul, which is less important, but it's still nice that it's there, and it helps keep a non-existent problem stay non-existent, so we can't fault it for that. And the condition is pretty easy, as all you need is an Infinity Eye marker in the same column. Generally speaking, when it comes to Clarence, when you're on your turn 3, because you can't get the 5 attack turn anyway, whatever column that you're not getting 2 attacks from, you put Clarence behind that as the quintessential booster for it. But even as an attacker, you can still enable this effect, as it says attacked or boosted, so he's very versatile in how he gives you that counter charge. Just keep in mind that you can only counter charge with 1 Clarence, so don't try to spam these on the board and get cute and counter charge at once. He's not going to let you do that. Again, Bushy designed this deck very carefully. Now on to more of the typical stuff. We've got 3 normal PGs. You can pick whatever you want. I just want the Honeycomb Zyros because it's, you know, someone make a colony as, so you might as well stick with the aesthetic, and Will Elementary Sanctitude. We don't need to discuss this. I mean, heck, the only thing I wanted to talk about this already did with the ride line section. And then for triggers, we're going to be running 8 critical triggers. Whether you choose effect or normal, it's up to you. For fronts, we're running 3 fronts. I could have chosen draws for this, and I think draws are about on equal standing with fronts as far as value to the deck goes, but there's already some amount of draw power in this deck, and I just really want wanted to make sure that the front row rear guards had the ability to hit pretty decent numbers because you're just attacking for the back row anyway. So this is another aspect of Honest to God that's quite good, because if you know that a front row is coming ahead of time, then you can just keep that front trigger on top and start boosting your back row more, so that you can then check the front trigger and substantiate them to equivalent numbers and even out the overall power lines on your fields. For heals, we're going to run 4 normal heals. I don't fault you if you want to run effect heals. The ones that hurt units that have attacked multiple times is pretty good, but still I just run normal because I want pretty reliable heals when you draw off the Infinity Eye markers. And finally, for the over trigger, I decided to go with Blessed Favor. You can't really go you can't go wrong with a lot of OTs, but Blessed Favor is good in most game states, and when you're able to maximize all of its effects, particularly that heal effect, it's such a tempo swing that it's hard for the opponent to come back from it. Trust me, on stream I've been trolled so much by Levidras checking OT for victory with this Blessed Favor. Yeah, there's no way there's no way I'm not gonna run this, dude. This thing is absolutely goated. I feel like it's one of the most underappreciated OTs of the whole lot. And that's the deck. Overall, I'd say that this is a pretty strong deck. Not necessarily some top tier deck, it's more of a tier 2 than anything, but I think even at the current level, it could take some pretty like rogue successful tops, but it's nothing about it is unfair. It has some pretty distinct disadvantages in terms of being piece reliant and sensitive to board control, and also it has some counterblast issues, so its resource management is not always the greatest. However, if you do line things up right, the ceiling of this deck is massive. There's so much payoff and build versatility to Levidras, and its growth potential is absolutely staggering. So those of you who are interested in this deck, I absolutely recommend picking it up, because I'm pretty damn sure you're going to get a good sweet return on your investment as time moves on and Bushy continues to support this deck. But even as of now, the Destined One of Infinity Levidras, yeah, he's a good guy by my books. I love playing this deck, and I think you will too. Thank you for watching. If you did like this deck profile, then go ahead and subscribe and turn on the notification bell for the next time I upload a deck profile. I'm intending to do this for the rest of the Destined ones, so if you're curious about what builds for those look like, then definitely stay tuned for the next time I do those. But if you're trying to look for other kind of Vanguard content, then look no further. This is a one-stop shop for all sorts of Vanguard content, whether that be anime reactions, tier lists, top 10s, discussions, fight nights, the whole shebang. So check those out. And a quick shout out to all of my channel members who helped me along the way and make this channel as successful as it is already. I couldn't have done it without you guys. So let's call out all my channel members who have helped me out. The Maz878, Calamitous Deuce, Dread Dreamer, Kershaw, Shirayuki, Nodote, Ace of Games, Just Andrew, Aqua Styles, Jamie Kasana, Samaj Stewart, Chibi Mitsune, Dramosa, Noir, and last but not least, Muffin Killer. Thank you all for helping out. I so appreciate it. And with that said, take care. God bless.